It was late afternoon when I heard the sound of the front door creak open. My heart tightened in anticipation, knowing that Tom, my husband, was home early. That never meant anything good. Sure enough, the footsteps approached quickly, with an impatience that had become all too familiar. I didn't turn around, just kept folding the laundry, trying to finish before the inevitable confrontation. "Hillary," he said, his voice low but cutting. "Why isn't the bathroom cleaned yet? What have you been doing all day?" I closed my eyes briefly, bracing myself. The truth was, I'd spent the entire day scrubbing the kitchen, vacuuming the living room, shopping for groceries, and picking up the dry cleaning, all while preparing dinner for 5 people. But I knew none of that mattered. To Tom, it was never enough. Nothing ever was. "I'm getting to it," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I turned to look at him, expecting the usual annoyed expression, the familiar sigh of frustration. But today, something was different. His jaw was clenched tighter than usual, and his eyes were darker. There was an edge of something more than just irritation. "You're always saying that," he snapped, his voice rising. "You're always behind on something. What's your excuse this time, Hillary? You sit at home all day. You don't even have a real job." That stung. I bit my lip, fighting back the urge to say something that would only make things worse. I wanted to tell him how hard I worked, how exhausting it was to manage everything. But I knew it wouldn't make a difference. He wouldn't listen. Instead, I turned back to the laundry, focusing on the task at hand. The quiet between us grew heavier with every second. I could feel his eyes burning into my back, waiting for a reaction that I refused to give. That only seemed to anger him more. Suddenly, he kicked over the basket of freshly folded clothes, sending them scattering across the floor. My heart leaped in shock. I stood frozen, staring at the mess, my hands trembling. How had we gotten here? How had Tom, the man I once loved and trusted, turned into someone so cruel? His words followed the action, sharp as knives. "You think you've got it hard, don't you? But you're nothing but a parasite living off me. You don't contribute to this family. You don't earn a single penny." I couldn't stop the tears that sprang to my eyes. I quickly wiped them away, not wanting to give him the satisfaction of seeing how deeply his words hurt. But it was too late. He saw, and as usual, it only seemed to fuel his anger. "A crying parasite," he muttered. "What a nuisance." Just then, the door to the living room opened, and Tom's mother walked in. Her timing couldn't have been worse, or perhaps it couldn't have been better. "Tom, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice stern as she took in the scene. I quickly looked away, embarrassed that she had caught me in such a vulnerable moment, but she wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were fixed on her son, and I could see the anger building in her gaze. "Nothing, Mom," Tom replied, his voice suddenly defensive. "Hillary was just—" "I heard everything," she interrupted, her voice like ice. "How dare you speak to her like that?" Tom's face paled. He had always been careful not to cross his mother. She was strict, but she was also fair. And when she was angry, everyone in the house knew to step back. "Hillary has been taking care of this house because we asked her to," his mother continued. "Do you think it's easy to manage a home of 5 people? Your father and I built this business, and we work hard every day because we know Hillary is keeping things together here. Without her, none of this would function." I looked up in surprise, hearing her words. I had always assumed Tom's parents didn't notice the effort I put into keeping the house in order, but his mother's anger told me otherwise. Tom remained silent, his head bowed. He couldn't meet his mother's eyes, and for the first time in what felt like years, I saw a flicker of doubt in his expression. "From now on," his mother said, her voice firm, "you will do everything for yourself. No more meals, no more laundry, no more housework. Let's see how well you manage without Hillary's help." Tom tried to protest, but his mother silenced him with a look. "You'll do it yourself," she repeated. or you'll learn just how much you've been taking her for granted." She turned to me then, her expression softening. "Hillary, you don't need to do anything for Tom anymore. Focus on the rest of the family. Let him learn what it's like." I was stunned, unsure of how to respond. I'd never expected her to step in like this, to take my side so firmly. But there was no question, she had made up her mind. That night, as I prepared dinner for everyone except Tom, I could feel the shift in the air. Tom sat at the table, quiet and brooding. His pride had taken a hit, and for once he seemed unsure of what to do. I wasn't sure how long this new arrangement would last, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a small glimmer of hope. The days that followed were strange. Tom, who had never lifted a finger to help around the house, was now forced to do his own laundry, cook his own meals, and clean up after himself. At first, he seemed determined to prove he could handle it. He fumbled through the tasks with clumsy frustration, but he never asked for help. I watched him struggle, silently wondering how long it would take before he admitted defeat. It wasn't long. A week later, I found him in the kitchen, staring at a pile of dirty dishes with a look of defeat. "Hillary," he said quietly, his voice lacking its usual arrogance, "can you show me how to do this?" For a moment, I considered saying no. I considered telling him that he had to figure it out on his own, just like I had. But something inside me softened at the sight of him, so lost and out of his depth. I nodded and walked over, showing him how to wash the dishes properly. He listened for once, without a single sarcastic comment. It was a small step, but it felt like a breakthrough. As the days passed, Tom's attitude began to change. He was still stubborn, still proud, but he was learning. Slowly but surely, he was beginning to understand just how much work went into managing a household. And though he never said it out loud, I could see the grudging respect in his eyes when he watched me cook or clean with ease. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Tom sat down beside me on the couch. He didn't say anything at first, just sat there in silence, as if gathering his thoughts. Finally, he spoke. "I'm sorry, Hillary," he said, his voice quiet but sincere. "I didn't realize how much you were doing. I thought it was easy. I don't know what I thought, but I was wrong. You're not a parasite. You're the one holding this family together." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. I had waited so long to hear something like this from him, and now that it was happening, I wasn't sure how to respond, but I didn't need to. Tom reached out and took my hand, and for the first time in years, I felt a connection between us that I thought had been lost forever. "I want to do better," he said. "I want to help more. I don't want to be that guy anymore, the one who thinks he's above everything. You deserve more than that." I looked at him, searching his face for any sign that this was just another empty promise. But there was something different in his eyes this time. Something real. From that day on, things changed. Tom began helping around the house without being asked. He started taking on some of the responsibilities I had carried alone for so long. And slowly, we began to rebuild the relationship that had been broken by years of resentment and misunderstanding. Tom's parents noticed the change, too. His mother, who had always been strict but fair, watched with approval as her son grew into a better version of himself. And his father, usually quiet and reserved, offered Tom advice on how to balance work and home life. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of tension between us, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were partners again, working together instead of against each other. One night, as we sat down to dinner, Tom looked at me and smiled, a real smile, not the mocking smirk I had grown so used to. "Thank you," he said, his voice warm and genuine, "for everything." I smiled back, feeling a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. We still had a long way to go, But for the first time in a long time, I believed that we could make it. As the months passed, our lives settled into a new rhythm. Tom continued to take on more responsibilities at home, and I found that I had more time for myself, time to relax, to pursue hobbies, to reconnect with friends. It was a balance I hadn't realized I needed, but now that I had it, I wasn't willing to give it up. Tom's transformation didn't happen overnight, but it was steady. He no longer treated me like a servant, but as an equal partner. And in return, I found myself forgiving the wounds of the past, slowly but surely. One evening, we were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. Tom turned to me, his expression serious but thoughtful. "I've been thinking," he said, "about everything, about how we got here and what I put you through. I don't want to be that person again. I want to be better. For you. For us." I squeezed his hand, appreciating the sincerity in his voice. "We've come a long way," I said softly, "but we're not done yet." He smiled at that, nodding in agreement. "No, we're not. But I'm willing to keep working at it. I want to make this work, Hillary. I want us to be happy again." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. Because I could see the change in him. I could feel it in the way he treated me, in the way he approached life. He wasn't perfect, but neither was I. We had both made mistakes, but we were learning, and that was enough. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in shades of orange and pink, I felt a sense of hope that I hadn't felt in years. We still had challenges ahead, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of them. We would face them together,